All right, guys, welcome back to the Clack Shack, and got a little surprise for everybody tonight. Got a new machine in the Clack Shack that we're going to be trying out, and just as a disclaimer to make sure YouTube doesn't get at me here, this machine was donated to me. I didn't buy it. The company sent me an email and asked me if I would be willing to try it, use it in some videos, and of course, I told them I would. I'm all about, you know, trying new things and new tools and that type of thing. So this video tonight is gonna basically just be a quick run through of this machine and how it works. So if that's something that you're interested in, stick around, and me and Fluffy will see what we can come up with some stuff to talk about on this machine. All right, guys, before we get started doing the fun stuff, I just want to kind of go through some things with you. This machine is built very different. If you do get one thing that I would like to point out to you that I had to learn the hard way is when they ship it, apparently they engage the emergency cutoff button and lock it down. So before you can power this thing up and get it to do anything, you have to release this emergency stop button by twisting it. I may have missed that. I don't know if it was in the instructions, but guys, y'all know I'm terrible with instructions anyway. I opened up the box. I only saw a handful of parts for this thing, and I was like, who needs instructions? But there's a couple of things that you do have to do. When you open the box, this thing, it comes in this piece here. The gantry is by itself. The laser is detached. The laser module is detached. All your cabling is detached. You have this side here is separate, this side, and then this crossbar. And then you have the cables, of course, and this little plug-in pad. That's it. I mean, it's a really simple build. You've got a total of 4 screws, 2 here and 2 there that you've got to put in. You've got one little roller bearing bolt that's got to go in over here. And the way that thing goes in, I learned this the hard way too because I tried to put it in wrong, is there's a plastic spacer, and then there's 2 bearings that kind of go together to form a pulley. And you put the plastic spacer on, put the 2 bearings on, facing each other, making that pulley. Put the screw in, tighten it down. You have to put this belt in place. It's got really easy, basically it's just 2 little notches that the belt hooks into, and as long as it stays under tension, it stays in there. So that was a pretty cool little design idea they had on that. The hardest thing that you'll have to do is slide this piece onto the main rail here. But there's 2 little nuts right here at the top of these wheels on the back side there that you'll have to loosen those off a little bit, and then once you get it on there, you can just kind of snug them back down. I've got it put together. I've checked my tension on everything, and everything moves freely. I don't have it, you know, it's not binding or doing any of that. The way that this one focuses is, in the paperwork, it showed this being a piece of like black acrylic. And I do think maybe they should go in and update the manual, but it's shaped just like the one in the manual, but this one is clear, the one in the manual is black. So don't let that fool you, because it did me, because they do actually include a few little small pieces of black acrylic, and I honestly thought that those little things were to use to set the focus with, because they had holes in them like for a keychain or something. But then when I did some research online, those are actually little pieces of sample material. So that kind of threw me. But see, as how this is a diode laser, it shouldn't cut this. I figure maybe they were using the black acrylic to start with and people kept cutting them. So maybe they decided to make it out of clear so they couldn't cut it. And they just forgot to update the manual. But the way you focus this one is you just set that on the work surface, and then you loosen this screw here and let that just gently rest on top of it, and then just tighten that back down. Don't try to go crazy on that thing, because it will push it down if you over tighten it. The guinea's getting fired up over there. By the way, the guinea now has 7 babies, but due to the fact that she's a terrible mom and she can't get them off the ground and we have too many raccoons and possums in this area, her fellow guinea has already been killed trying to hatch the eggs, and I couldn't find the nest, but I finally found the nest and took the eggs before they hatched, gave them to a chicken, and so now I have adopted guinea's babies out to a chicken, and they're in the safety of the chicken pen so that possums and raccoons can't get them. So as soon as they get a little bit bigger, I will have 8 guineas running around. I don't know if they'll be as domesticated as that one is, but not to get off topic, but just for those of y'all that know Guinea and know that she frequents the shack. But once you get that focused, you have 2 options to operate the machine. One is this little basically tablet. I mean, that's I don't know what other way to describe it. It's a touchscreen tablet basically, and it has a little interface on there. Once you get everything put together, you get it powered up, you've got to put this TF card in there for it to work. I'm guessing that serves as the hard drive for the machine. The operating system very well may be on there, and so you've got to have that in for this to work. The power button and all these buttons, I will say they did a pretty cool job on those because they're all metal and chrome and recessed, and it's kind of, I kind of like the button setup. So on this touchpad, you got a little home button, very similar to what you would have in Lightburn, and you just push the button and it homes. The one thing that this machine does have is it has 2 limit switches. It only has 2 for homing, but it has those 2 limit switches so it doesn't slam up against itself. I haven't seen any limit switches going out, and the way that it triggers them, I would think I would be able to see them. So once you get it homed, that's pretty much, I mean, the controller it'll do like small increment movements if you don't have really fat fingers, and you can hit the button. But it does a pretty good job. You can actually burn from this. Let me raise it up a little bit here to where I can focus on some material, and I'll do a little quick engrave right quick. I don't have a honeycomb for this one, and I didn't want to move anything out of my enclosure, so currently I'm just running on the piece of metal that came with my honeycomb from my other machine. And if you notice, it came with a small piece of metal, this one here, but it's smaller than the workspace, so I opted not to use that one. And since this one wasn't being used, I decided to use it. But it has a frame button on here, so you can hit the frame button. It doesn't have a pointer. It uses the actual laser. So you'll get like just a very minute little dot on your workpiece. The only downside that I'm having a problem with is when it returns to home like that, you got to get it over your workpiece in order to focus it, which I guess I can move it by hand. That might be just easier to move it by hand. And then with the wood in place, got to put the little card down, snug that back so it doesn't move, and pull the little card out. So now I'm going to frame again. Wait a minute, I should have homed it. Guys, I moved it by hand. That was my bad. See, that's why I didn't want to move it by hand. See, on my X tool, I use, well, I guess I could do it that way if I'm not using this controller. But let me rehome so that it knows where it's at. All right, once I get it rehomed, now I'm going to frame. I don't know what file this even is. Let me find my glasses, guys. They claim that you don't have to wear glasses with this thing. It doesn't come with any, but sorry, guys. I'm not taking their word for it. So I've got it framed, and this says it's a QR code, so I'm going to go ahead and just let this run. It automatically asks on this little controller how many passes. The one thing that I did learn last night when I was getting it set up and trying to at least figure out how to work it before I had you guys on the camera making fun of me was when you design the burn, you have to design the burn in light burn. Before you can even design the burn, you have to open light burn. You don't, it's not going to mess with any of the other machines. I did find that out. You open another instance of light burn. You have to install this machine as a new machine, and then you have to create a profile in light burn to be able to use this machine with it. Once you create that profile and you set all the parameters for the laser to operate, then you create the file, and down in the bottom right corner you use the save G-code function and send it to this card here. And once you pull the card out and put it in this machine, whatever burn settings you have in here, number of passes, power, speed, all of that is saved in here. But this thing still asks you how many passes do you want to carve. And of course I didn't know that when I first tried it, and so I run the number of passes up, and that makes it run the entire job. So this, in my opinion, could be taken out and not used, because if you're designing it in light burn and you put it in here, then there's really not a need for this question, how many passes. So just leave that to 1 and hit yes. And then what it's going to do is it'll run over and it'll run the job. And I'm going to be honest with you, it says it's a 5.5 watt module, but the engraving aspect of it so far, I mean, it's competitive with what I've experienced with the 10. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. It cuts this 4.5 millimeter Luan that I use. It'll cut through it in 4 passes with very, very little variations, I guess you could say. Occasionally I'll get a little stubborn spot, but it done really well. I cut some pretty good stuff last night with it, and it has really surprised me. I might not should have ran this QR code. I think this thing takes quite a while to run. What I'm going to do, I don't want to stop the job. I would like for you to be able to see the quality of the burn. The QR code would be a cool one to use, because I could actually put it up to the camera and you can see it, see how it does. But yeah, I think I'm going to pause the video for a few minutes and take a break, go feed some animals, and then I'll come back once it's done and we'll restart the video. All right, guys, the QR code went well, and like I said, let me see if I can see if this is going to focus on there. But the QR code went well. The laser does a remarkably good job with the detail. I will say that it's doing a good job with the smaller, finer details. And keep in mind, I ran this using the same power settings that I run on my other machine, and so that's it's not a terrible job in my opinion. Definitely for what it's intended, it's definitely doing a pretty good job. It surprises me how powerful it actually is. One thing that I do want to show you too is this is a piece of my cedar that I've done, and I've done a cut test with other machines, my other machine specifically. This is 7.8 millimeter cedar wood, and I've done cut tests before with my other machine. And I'm just going to take this piece of 8 millimeter cedar, and I'm going to run a circle on it, and I'm going to run it for like 6 passes and see if it'll make it through it, and how soon it makes it through it. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to space it up so that hopefully it will fall, and I will know that it's cut all the way through. And so I'm gonna get me a few little scraps of wood over here and build me a little drop test and see if it'll drop. Hopefully it will, and we'll be able to determine how well this thing cuts. So I'm just gonna get this over here by hand and go ahead and get the focusing maneuver done here. I have learned don't go crazy on tightening that. Just you barely tighten it, and it's more than enough. So I've got that centered. Now I'm going to show you something unique that I didn't know was possible. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I may be a rookie at this, but this machine, I'm going to home it using the controller. All right. So now I'm going to switch over here to Lightburn. I've got this thing configured in Lightburn to work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a little circle. It may not be a perfect circle. I'm going to try to make it like 20 by 20. So it's not going to be huge. Guinea, be quiet, bud. And I'm going to set that at, I'm going to run this one down because I've got it set on my machine here for 7 millimeters a second with 6 passes. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run. But if in the event that it falls, I'll stop it there. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and use the circle frame feature and see how that does. Wait a minute, I got to turn my output back on here. All right, so I need to move my workpiece. I have got spoiled with my camera though, guys. And to be honest, it works with Lightburn, so it'll work with the camera too. It would just be a matter of coming up with a way of mounting it above the machine. So, and don't think I ain't already working on that. Don't think and don't pay attention to what's going on over here in the box. I've already measured out and calculated and figured out a way to make a jig board for this thing, and it's actually over there now running. I'm cutting out the pieces, but it's going to be a 16 by 16 piece of board, so it's going to take a little while to burn, but that'll probably be a thing for another video once I get the bugs worked out of it. But I've already figured out how to make a jig adapter and jig panel for this machine. So all right, so I'm going to frame it one more time just to make sure I'm completely on the material, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit start on that guy. And this thing doesn't have any air assist or anything, so it's this is just pure diode laser at work. That's one pass right there, and that's a second pass right there. And I can see the laser and the smoke coming out from beneath it, so it is peeked through already. That's the third pass right there. It's still a little sporadic. It's a little more solid now. And there goes round 4. And I'm pretty much constantly seeing light reflecting off of the metal underneath. So there it goes. It dropped. All right, so about 4.5, it dropped. I'm going to go ahead and stop it, guys. I'm going to go ahead and rehome that baby. So 4.5 passes, and it cut completely through this 8 millimeter cedar, right at 8 millimeter cedar, and to the point to where it dropped. Now it looked like it may have been mostly cut prior to it dropping, but it dropped on 4.5 turns. So I'm going to go ahead and put another piece up here, or just roll it around and put the piece back up. And I'm going to do it one more time just to make sure that this is not a fluke. I'm going to go ahead and frame. All right, everything framed. This doesn't have a crosshair. It does use the low output laser dot to frame. So that is that's a little different. But you have to actually turn it on when you're using the Lightburn. But pretty much when it frames, you can see the laser head, and unless you're trying to be really exact, you really wouldn't need the dot. All right, so that's one full pass. Two full passes. Starting to see light on the spoil board. Pretty consistent. 3. 4. That's 5. And it's not dropping, guys, but I'm seeing the dot continually underneath it, so it's through it. It's just such a tight fit that it's not dropping. I'm gonna just tap it with this and see if it falls out. No. Let's inspect that. So it was loose. I mean, it was loose. It was just in there so tight. The cutting beam on this thing is really, really thin. I will say that. It makes for, I mean, you can put that piece of wood back in there and it's tight going in and like pretty snug. So, I mean, that's pretty good. But I did notice on their advertisement something about 15 millimeters of wood. So we're going to see exactly how low it'll go. All right, guys, so we're either fixing to start a fire or do something really cool, and I'm not sure which. So this is a 20.7 millimeter piece of magnolia. Magnolia is a member of the poplar family, so it's not a real hardwood, but it's not a real light wood. So I'm going to set this up. And I'm going to kind of try to set it where you guys will be able to see the light when it starts coming through the piece of wood. So I'm going to turn it toward the camera a little bit. I'm going to use my little spacers. And I'm going to go ahead and get this thing, if it's got enough elevation. I haven't tried this, so it may not. Yeah, it'll go up pretty high, so that's good. I'm going to set it down on the little piece of glass that they tell you to use. Tighten that back up. Bring that out. I'm going to run that same circle that I just did, but I'm going to run the passes up to like 20 because I suspect it'll take 20 passes to be able to see this. So I'm going to go ahead and rehome it. They're saying 15 millimeters of wood, guys, so I just want to see if I can see light through the other side of that piece of magnolia, I'll be impressed. All right, going to go ahead and frame her up. There's where the hole's going. And starter. And this is, like I said, this is no air assist, no honeycomb. I do have an airspace underneath it that I've created with those couple of little pieces of wood. But I'm going to be honest with you, if it can punch just a tiny hole through this piece of wood, I will be duly impressed. And maybe looking for a larger Atomstack machine to add to my collection. But they say that because of the way they've got their beam compressed and focused, that it'll penetrate deeper than any other laser. So we're fixing to see how low it'll go. And if it doesn't cut all the way through, my plan is, guys, to take this over to the bandsaw and cut it, and that way we can inspect and see exactly how deep it did go. But I'm running 20 passes on this, so I mean, you would think 20 passes would, if it's going to get anywhere near, you would think 20 passes would do it. Guinea. So I don't know how many passes we've got left to go, guys. It says it's 47% complete, if you trust Lightburn, so I'm guessing we should be close to halfway. So that should be about 10 passes. But like I said, just to be fair to Atomstack, I am going to take this piece of wood once it gets through and cut it on a bandsaw and see how deep it did make it into the wood. if it doesn't make it all the way through. I mean, that is a possibility. Not seeing anything breaching through. So it's just hard for me to believe that that laser can stay focused that deep into that piece of wood, because I know, you know, with my existing laser, I really have an issue with the deeper you go, the less focus you have. Okay, so that's 20 passes. And no, there's nothing coming through. So let me pause the video, and I'm going to go over and see exactly how deep it did cut, and we'll measure it. All right, guys. There you go. It did not make it all the way through, but this is absurdly thick wood for a laser to be trying to cut. So let me get my measuring tape here. As you can see, there's 0, okay? So it penetrated at least 10 on that side, and it almost looks like they're saying 15 millimeters. It's pretty accurate, because I can see the line on the other side, and it's down there. It may be past 15 millimeters. So to be fair, I think I'm going to try to find a 15 millimeter piece of wood, guys. Stand by. Okay, no luck on a 15 millimeter piece of wood. That is an odd dimension of wood. But I did find a 13 millimeter piece of wood. So we're going to use a 13 millimeter piece of wood. And I'm going to place it in the same general area as I did the other one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, once I get this started, I'm going to try to back that camera, or zoom that camera down to where you guys can see. So I'm going to reframe this again. I'm going to have to refocus, to be fair. Little focusing board there. All right. So I'm going to set this the same way. I'm going to do 20 passes, and we'll see how many it takes to get it done. So I'm going to try to zoom you in, guys, where you can see what's going on here. Bear with me on my camera. And there we go. That looks pretty decent there. So this is a 20 pass cut. Now I'm running it at 7 millimeters per second at 100% power output. And keep in mind, guys, this is a 5.5 watt unit. So this is not a 10, this is not a 20. It's a 5.5 watt. So my mind tells me it shouldn't even be able to do it, but after what I saw with the Magnolia, I think it may be able to. Now, it's taken quite a few passes, no doubt, but just to be able to get that beam to penetrate that deep into the wood, I think is an accomplishment. All right, it's at 40% complete. %, complete. So we should be somewhere around 10 passes. But that's 13 millimeter thick cedar. It smells pretty cool. It almost looks like it's dropped down, but it hadn't fell out. But I'm not seeing any light down at the bottom, so. I'm hearing popping. So it's definitely getting hot. %71%. %90%, so we're getting pretty close to being done with 20 passes. And it hasn't failed, and I'm not seeing any light coming out the bottom yet, so this may be a win for the cedar. Yep, not quite. So I'm going to walk over and do the same thing, guys. I'm going to cut this and see where it went to. All right, guys, so the penetration on this was not quite as good as it was on the Magnolia, but it still got down there to about, I'd say 7 millimeters or so on those 20 passes. Now, like I said, that's at 7 speed, so slower, it would probably do a lot better. It doesn't have an air assist or anything, so. But for the machine, for a 5.5 watt machine, I'm really kind of impressed with that. All right, guys, so as far as cutting goes, I'm gonna say that if you plan on doing a lot of cutting, that this machine, unless you're gonna be sticking with the 2 and 3 millimeter plywood, this machine's probably not ideal for you. But that 7 millimeter thick cedar that it cut in a little over 4 passes. So some light cutting, you know, it would be good for that. If this was going to be an engrave only machine, like if you really didn't have any intentions on doing a lot of cutting, it does pretty well at that. One thing that I will show you before we go, because I know a lot of you guys hear me preaching about cedar, because I love my cedar. So what I want to do right quick is I'm going to get this thing focused over here, over this little block of cedar. And this machine, with the precision on the laser that it has and the clarity I've seen so far, I am pretty sure that this guy will rock on some cedar, because cedar takes the engraving really well. It makes nice and dark engraves, and it's usually really clear. So I'm going to do a real quick Clack Shack logo here on that little piece of cedar I got over there. So let me go ahead and rehome the machine before I mess up and make it do something it don't need to do. All right, frame it out. Okay, so I'm off right there. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and run this. And like I said, I'm running this with the settings that I use on my primary laser, so, but I'm pretty sure it'll do great for this cedar. Like I said, this little guy's been running pretty consistent with engraving. And that's really kind of my plan for it. I'll be using this because this is handy the way that you can pick it up and just sit it wherever you want. It's actually a little more versatile than what I'm used to, because I can actually just save the file and use this controller, or I can run a USB cable and run it off of Lightburn. So, I mean, if I wanted to take this thing to the back porch of my house, or take it into the house, and like I've got my table that I built inside the house, if I didn't want to bring it all the way out here, I could just pick this thing up, take it in there, set it where I wanted it, and use the controller and engrave it and not have to have a computer. So that's pretty cool. I like that idea. And for the price point, before I conclude the video, let me make sure of the price point on this thing, because I don't want to be misinforming anybody. This is the, like I said before, this is the Atomstack P9 M40, and on Atomstack's website, it's actually showing $299. Showing another one. It's the P7. It's an older or maybe a newer version. I'm not sure, but this machine's showing $299 on Atomstack's website, and I haven't looked it up on Amazon or any of that, but I'm sure it's available on Amazon as well, and I can even drop you some links on it. But I'm gonna come over here and show you this this engraving again. I'm gonna have to switch you back over to manual focus, guys. I know I'm killing y'all with this, but I really want to show you what it looks like. So there's the engraving, and like I said, that's only the size of a nickel, and so that's pretty good. It's actually not a lot of scorching. Did a good job, nice and dark. I could probably slow it down a little bit more to get a little bit more color to it, but generally that's kind of what I go for on the cedar. You don't want to go too dark because it will char real bad. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. Like I said, it's not a bad machine for the price. I mean, it does have its limitations, of course, but for $300, it's not terrible. The work area on it is 220 by 250. I believe that's what the stat said. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you again. Yeah, 220 millimeters by 250. Like I said, it's only a 5.5 watt. It says it's a 40 watt, but that's the input of the diode, not the output of the light. It's a solid little machine. I will say that it's very simple. The whole machine. I mean, you can just lift it up like this, and there's not a lot to it. I do kind of like it. I know it's a little novel, but I do kind of like the little controller. I mean, I've never had one that done this, so it's kind of a neat feature to me. The cord's not excessively long, and if I were going to use this as my primary machine, and if I was going to put it in a place that it would be sitting and not being moved, I would probably make myself a bracket to come off of my table and come up and either magnetically attach to that so that it would be up here as opposed to down here. There's some cooling fins right here, so when I put it on there, I try to get it a little high so that it doesn't cover those up. But you don't have to have the USB cable connected to it if you're running it with this, and so it's very low maintenance as far as there's not a whole lot of moving parts. The way that these rails are designed, it would take a lot for these things to get clogged up, it looks like, because they're using like a wheel that runs in a channel, and it has beveled edges to try to keep everything lined up. So that seems like it would have to really get trashed up pretty bad for it to cause an issue here. This little pin that sticks out hits the limit switch back there. I wasn't crazy about the cable management on this, and I'm still not 100% sure. I'm not going to try to come up with some way, maybe take and if they would have taken and put just a tiny hole in this plastic cover right here, there's enough slack in this cable where you could leave a little bit of a bail there, and you could put a zip tie there, and that to me looks a lot better if it was done that way. So Atomstack, if you're watching, that's really all it would take. Would just and it's probably going to get one if it continues to be used by me. I'll probably end up making sure that it's safe to do so and drilling me a small hole in here. It came with some zip ties, but there's really not anywhere to put the zip ties to. So that was my thought, was I could take and put that there. This is it's down in a hole. These wires kind of move a little, but from what I've been watching it's not terrible. I don't think it would be too bad of an idea to take and maybe put a larger zip tie here to kind of keep the pressure off of where these wires go into the plug. But you'd have to be careful not to block the back side here. But there's a little bit of a void right there. So I'm gonna play around with the cable management after I've used it a little bit and kind of see what the cable's habits are, because I don't want to go messing it up and causing any issues. But yeah, I mean, it's for the price, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. If you've never had a laser and you're thinking about getting into them, it's not a bad deal if you're not planning on doing anything super big and you're not planning on cutting anything super thick. It works pretty well. Seems pretty well built, simplistic, easy to put together. So I'm not going to throw my other machine away because I need a little bit higher production for what I do than what this thing's capable of. But I do have a couple of friends that have mentioned they wouldn't mind getting something that they could do their own work with, and this might not be a bad solution for them. But if you're wanting higher productivity as far as cutting, this definitely isn't going to be the machine for you, because it will cut, but you're going to have to be very patient, and you're going to have to really pour the coal to it and use thinner materials. But now, for those of you that may have this machine, I've got something in my lab over here running right now. It's a 4-part design, but once I get it designed, I'm going to have my own spoil board built for this thing. And the front half of the spoil board is actually going to serve as jig panels as well. So I've got it designed, I've got it cutting, and once it gets designed and once it gets cut, I'll put it on here. I'm actually going to use this piece of metal that came with my X-Tool honeycomb. I'm just going to leave it under this machine, and I'm even thinking about maybe even building it a base out of some MDF or something, just to have a flat surface, because this workbench is not exactly flat. So, but anyway, I hope this helps, guys. And if you were looking at one or considering one, if it were me, I would probably take a gamble with it, because it's pretty handy, especially if you're just doing small stuff, small engravings. If all you ever plan to do is small items and all you want to do is engrave, it'll work. And it is very simple. So that's about all I've got on that tonight. I've got to get started on some stove covers, because they keep coming and keep coming. I also got an order for I designed a new box specifically for a customer, and I've got to turn out 100 of those little boxes, and each one of those boxes, I can only get 2 boxes out of 1 sheet of my plywood that I use out of my 16 by 16. So that's going to be a pretty extensive project I got to get started on. And then I've got another job that I was asked about today, that as soon as they figure out what they want, I got to get that done. And I've still got countless small jobs lined up that I've got to do. So one thing that I will probably be doing with this, while I got you, is I had somebody drop off some ammo cans, and they want me to engrave ammo cans. Well, I need this machine to be running and doing my cutting for my other projects, but I have figured out how I can set this guy up. And the way this is designed, with the laser out here by itself and nothing in the way, this is going to be a great tool for my ammo cans. And it's got enough power, I'm pretty sure it can knock the paint off of an ammo can. So that may be in a video too. So I appreciate you stopping by, and if you got any questions or anything, let me know. But I'm sure you'll be seeing this guy again in a future video as soon as I get caught up and have time to kind of devote a little more attention to it. So thanks for stopping by, and hit the subscribe button on your way out if you don't mind, please. And have a good day.